You're listening to Together by AGCI. I'm Melissa Rush. Today we're chatting with the incredible Genet Roba. In today's episode, Genet shares her adoption story and what it was like to be adopted from Ethiopia as an older child. This episode is a must listen for anyone in the adoption community or thinking about becoming an adoptive parent. Genet's story is filled with miracles, and she has so much wisdom to share. Let's get into our conversation. So I am so excited to have my friend Genet here on the podcast today. Thank you so much for joining us, Genet.
Of course. Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
So I would love if you could just kind of start at the beginning and, share whatever parts of your adoption story that you're comfortable sharing, how old you were when you were adopted, if you have memories of this time.
So I have a younger brother. His name is Asher. So it was just the two of us. And after we lost both of our biological parents, God provided some connections. And I was really, really young and taking care of him. And I had to stop going to school because the burden was too much.
Yeah.
For that being, we were able to go into the orphanage, which AI, probably the majority of the people will know it. So at that time, I did not know people actually are able to get adopted internationally.
Mm-hmm.
What I knew is okay, they would go to the orphanage and then they will grow up until they are able to go to universities, like 18 or 19.
Mm-hmm.
And then they will get help outside of the orphanage. That was in my mind. So after we got into the orphanage and there were quite a few, American parents or from Europe, they would come and take the kids. And I was really confused and I'm like, what's going on,
Yeah.
So I had some friends and then I was asking them and they were telling me and I was like, oh, okay. So at that time it was a very dark moment for me. One, the suffering that my brother and I went through.
Yeah.
And at the moment we were in this transition, it's like, okay, who's going to accept us and who's going to able to take us to the state and actually be our parents. And as an older sister, there's playing the mom role.
Yeah.
Okay, what if they like me and what if they don't like my brother, or it could be vice versa.
Yeah.
And it was something that I wasn't willing to play, as in one of us to be separated because it's just the two of us that's left.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember, I used to have a nightmare about it. I used to be really, really, now looking back to it, I can identify it. I used to be very depressed. I used to be very isolated with everybody because, looking on the future, and there is, so prior to our story, after my dad passed away when I was 7, and then my mom left us out of the blue when I was 9. So there's this questions okay, why did that happen?
Yeah.
My brother and I wasn't good enough. So could this happen in the future? You know what I mean? So when we found out that we had a family that were able to adopt us, so the process, it was so amazing how God covered my brother and I. We were in orphanage for at least 7 months. And then there were kids that were there for years. As in 7 years up to 10 years.
Wow.
So as soon as we got a family, I was like, okay, at least God's working, and the Ethiopian process, it can be very challenging.
Yeah.
And God was in it through it all. So our process, it didn't even took 3 weeks. It was just rapidly. It was completed. So my parents were able to come and they were able to bring us to the state.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I am here. A small version.
Yeah. No, that's a pretty amazing story. And to go from, losing, your parents, being in an orphanage, not knowing what the future held, like you said, it's a really traumatic experience. And to go through and to feel, especially as an older sibling, and to feel responsibility for your brother and I'm sure that was really, really difficult. So when you found out you're going to be adopted, you were what emotions were going through you? Because that also meant you'd be leaving
Yes.
Ethiopia.
Yes. So the funny part, I had a really, really close friend. So she got adopted.
Hmm.
And her sister, she has a sister as well. Her sister process, it wasn't completed at the same time. So her parents came to take her first. And then the dad came back to take her sister. So at that time, since I was her closest friend,
Yeah.
she had some gifts and some letters to the house mothers and to her friends. And she told her dad, she's like, "Oh, Genet is my closest friend. Can you give it to her? And she will just distribute it and it will be easier."
Yeah.
So the dad came, and I remember he was there for 3 days, and I was helping him as much as I could.
Hmm.
And we got really, really attached. And I remember on the third day, when he said, when he came to the orphanage to say goodbyes, he was sobbing, like
Oh,
literally, like the way he was crying, like it looked like he was leaving his daughter,
yeah.
behind.
Yeah.
So after he came back to the state, a month later, they told us we were having a family that was able to adopt us. And I was hoping it was going to be my friend's
Oh,
dad.
yeah.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
cool part just ended up being that way.
It did. Oh my goodness. I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
No.
crazy.
At that time, my parents had adopted like two from China, which AGC, I was able to help them through the process, the adoption process.
Wow.
And they adopted two from Ethiopia,
Oh.
and they have three of their own. So when my dad came and told her about myself and my brother Asher, my mom was like, "Oh no, like no more kids, I'm done." And he's like, "Let's pray about it." She's like, "No, we're not praying about it." That's the story that I heard after I came back. So it was cool how God did it. So my dad got a really, really touched towards me,
Hmm.
and what they were praying. From the story my mom was telling me, she was driving, and we have like this big van.
Yeah. Yes, I can imagine.
Literally, it was like 50 passenger seats.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
So while she was driving in that season of their life, she couldn't hit the pedal, like the brake.
Hmm.
And literally, my mom is a woman of prayers. Her faith is incredible. So God flat out told her, like, to pull aside. And literally, she saw my brother jumping, and God told her, "Asher is your son."
Wow.
So right then, there was no hesitation. She was being obedient. She called my dad, and she told him, "Those are our kids. Let's start the process." And you are familiar with the adoption process, because I think after
Yeah.
you adopt, you have to wait about a year or two
Hmm.
to be able to adopt another kid.
Hmm.
But God being our favor, literally in a month when they sent the application, they got the approval for it.
Wow. That is a
So
miraculous story.
very, yeah.
And how special too that your friend, like somebody who also, in addition to your brother, who like kind of
Yeah.
understood what you had gone through, and all, like then now is your sister.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was
Wow.
it was very cool. Like all of our friends, they're like, "You guys are lucky. You guys are best friends now, sisters."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. So that okay, so wow, I'm sorry, that is like one of the craziest stories I've ever heard. Um, what was your transition like into your adoptive family like? Like so then you're okay, I'm being adopted by, I mean, at least you'd established a relationship with your now dad. So you knew he wasn't a stranger to you at that point, which
Mhm.
is
Yeah.
helpful, I would imagine. But
Yeah.
then you're leaving, you're coming to the US into a large family with kids, from adopted kids, bio kids, all the things. What was that like?
At first, it was chaotic, honestly,
Yeah.
because growing up, it was just Asher and I, my brother and I, and then now coming into a big family. I'm a very observant person. Like for the first 2 months, and there was like a language barrier too.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to communicate that much.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just watch and like we share bedrooms, we share like some of our clothes, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, this is kind of weird. Because and
Big
plus,
change.
like coming from Ethiopia, like you have a picture of what America life looks like
Sure.
from the volunteers that they come and share how their
Mm-hmm.
lifestyle is, and from the TV that you see, like the teenagers will have their own room, or the girls will have, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
No, totally. Yeah.
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 So there's that imaginations, and then now the reality is like, okay, I have to share my bedroom, I have to
Mm-hmm.
share this, and everything is big in our family. So like the table is big, the food that we prepare is big, because we are a big family. So
Mm-hmm.
for the first 2 to 3 months, it was trying to fit in,
Mm-hmm.
um, and plus, like, what if I do bad? Let's say if I make a mistake, how is that gonna look like?
Sure. Yeah.
So I feel like I had to force myself to be in a perfect spot,
Yeah.
not to make a mistake. What if they, I don't know, if I was being disobedient, is that going to look like to send me back home? If
Oh,
that
yeah.
happened, how is my life is going to be, and what
Mm-hmm.
does my brother fall under?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I would say the first 5 months I was juggling, and my mom, she homeschooled each of us, and that
Mm-hmm.
was a little different from me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, when we were in the orphanage, of course, like, I guess you kind of can call it homeschool because we will all have like our own classes, but still it was on the same compound.
Mm-hmm.
But I've never heard of homeschool. So this was
Yeah.
my first time. And my mom being a teacher, my grandma being our math teachers, that was a little different.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, looking back to it now, I'm glad. And I enjoyed being homeschooled. So,
But that, yeah, no, it's a big transition. And I'm glad because that's something we talk about a lot, that especially with kids who are older, who are adopted, that there's kind of this feeling like, you don't yet feel secure in your
mhm,
family because of your past experiences and the trauma that you've been through. And so there's this fear like, what if I don't do everything perfectly? Will they love
yes.
me? Will they leave me? Which is like just a tremendous weight for a child to
Mhm,
carry. Yeah, that must have been difficult.
so hard.
I mean, obviously, as an adult looking back, you have a different perspective, but thinking about that now, is there anything that could have made that transition a little bit easier?
Maybe to able to make connections like with the as a me being from Ethiopia, like with the
Hmm.
Ethiopian community.
Yeah.
Um, because what I noticed was even from my friends' parents, like if someone calls, like let's say if, one of their friend calls, and if we speak to them in Amharic, they'll get
Hmm.
in trouble for it because thinking the parents will think, oh, you're talking something bad about the family. You
Oh,
know what I mean? Because of
sure.
the not knowing the language.
Sure.
So I wish we had that connection in a way. Um, Maybe it could help. I don't know. But at the same time, there's a big gap with the Ethiopian community as well, which
Mm,
what I notice now.
yeah.
One, not able to understand what adoption is. As soon as
Mm,
like I tell them, hey, like you kind of share your own stories, right? They'll be
sure.
like, oh, so how did you came up from like Ethiopia? Like,
Yeah.
yeah. So I would tell them, oh, I'm adopted. Right away in their minds, like, oh, you're a citizen. I'm like, okay. So there's
So,
other questions that comes behind it as well. So in a way, maybe they could have at the same time, like looking back to it, I'm glad they did not. Because there would be like, I feel like there would be like pressure as in, oh, you have to help your family since like, they're Americans, maybe they can give you a lot of more money. I don't know. And the culture difference and yeah.
sure.
So
Yeah. That's interesting. So even you feel like, well, like you said, as an adult and like now, having friends and knowing people that are like, have come to Ethiopia, not through, I mean, have come to the US from Ethiopia, not necessarily through adoption. And they kind of are, do you feel like an outsider then in that regard then too? Because there's like an aspect where there's a difference, I guess, in how
hmm
you, yeah.
With this one, literally, you can do like a whole podcast, Melissa. It is so crazy. It makes me sad because, like, so right after I graduated from high school in 2013, I moved to Portland for school. My dad is and my American dad. I mean, his sister, my aunt, she lives here, so I was able to stay with them and work and go to school. So I was able to meet quite a few Ethiopians, and I started going to Ethiopian church. So, like, with my surrounding, like, because I wanted to continue like learning my language and my culture. Um, but with that, the transition, honestly, was really, really hard. Because what I mentioned earlier, it's like, oh, okay, so if you were adopted, that means you're a citizen. In that case, are you going to be able to marry my uncle, and then I'll pay you $50,000 to $60,000? I'm like with me, because I grew up with American family, and I didn't know all these things. Like, honestly, I was like, wait, what? There's such a thing? They're like, yeah, you can marry him and do that. I'm like, no.
I don't want to marry your uncle. No. Thank you. Yeah.
The other thing is like, that's what I'm saying. I don't think there's a knowledge of what adoption is. And I'm very, very close with my parents and, with my family. Yeah. And whenever I talk about my parents or my mom or my dad, they'd be like, oh, how are you able to call your white mom? I'm like, and I start, because it has come, this statement has been made like quite a few times. And I'm like, okay, so there is a lack of knowledge what adoption looks like. Yeah. And at the same time, like my own people back home, yes, not everybody lives a different life. Everybody has their own financial crisis or whatever. However, these people, they came across the ocean to accept and to claim that I was their child. However, my own blood wasn't able to play that role. Do you see what I'm saying? And that's my answer to them. It's like, okay, if you want to be raw, I'm going to be raw with you. Sure. But at the same time, God can use anybody. It's just a matter of being obedient and hearing his voice. So, yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah, no, we might have to do another conversation just about that, because that's fascinating. Thank you for sharing about that. So going back in time a little bit here, when what kind of support did you and your family have, like when you came home? Like, were there, people at your family's church that were trying to help out, or family members? What did that look like?
So my grandparents on my dad's side, they were very involved. So my grandma was our math teacher. And,
yes.
And she was, she taught me a lot of things, honestly, like how to sew, and she's very crafty. She's amazing. So and then church families. And I think at that time, my parents were building a good relationship with the Lord. So the church that they go to, they start going prior, like us moving, which I didn't like, but I mean, the people were nice and they were very supportive. And my mom was an amazing woman. So being homeschooling all those kids and providing food, and my dad was so he works, and my mom was a stay-home mom. But I think she had enough support.
That's great.
Yeah.
In your opinion, again, like kind of thinking back, what do you feel like your parents like really got right with, raising you, with adoption? That's a broad question, I know, but I'm sure it was many things.
I'll say one of them being in obedience to his calling. Because, sometimes God can speak to us and we pretend that we listen, but we don't take the actions.
Sure.
So one, they got right by listening and being in obedience and actually taking a leap of faith. Because, that time, raising all those kids, probably, they might have not enough money to support the family. And plus, right after like 2 kids coming into their home and then adding another one, and that just a fast pace, that's not an easy thing, especially for the kids that were in the home. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, like after we get older, like, actually I was talking to my sister that's adopted from China, like, how much, because she was the first one, and she was like, I used to be spoiled. So after you
Yeah.
guys came, like, I wasn't able to get set this and that. So, those little things,
Yeah.
like, it was not easy, but they were able to take the risk for that. So that, and my parents created like an amazing environment, as in, like, we used to celebrate American New Year, Chinese New Year, Ethiopian New Year, because the calendar being different. So we
Yeah.
used to have
Yeah.
like all the cultural food, and my dad is an amazing cook. He can make anything, like literally. So him creating that environment for us, like we used to eat Asian food, Ethiopian food, American food, like any food,
Mm-hmm.
um, introducing us to different cultures and actually to respect it and to value it.
Mm-hmm.
That and investing in our spiritual life,
Mm-hmm.
especially. So on my sophomore year, we moved to Olympia, Washington.
Okay.
So that is when actually God just shifted our family's faith. And my parents start ministering into like premarital classes or marriage classes.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just like how God just rotates, from our previous faith that we had. And then now, I think that was like the most beautiful moment, teaching us life skills. So
Mm-hmm.
I say, like, we didn't grow up spoiled. We had chores. The
Yeah.
house used to be like literally spotless. It doesn't even look like there were 10 kids in it. Like,
That is amazing. Yeah.
my mom, she did it the smart way.
Yeah.
So like, after, like, I got up from the house, it's like, okay, I am able to cook. I am able to do my own chores. Like there wasn't anything that was new to me, like, how to use a
Yeah.
vacuum, or if I
Sure.
had to go down and clean the toilet, like, she taught me those life skills. So I was
Mm-hmm.
able to equip that. So I think those are most of the things that they did correct.
Yeah. Yeah. That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
They sound like amazing parents. Is there anything that you wish that your parents had known or been aware of before they adopted you?
I think my parents were very like knowledgeable when it comes to, like, the adoption and all that. But one of the things I wish they would have done, maybe for us to seek like counseling,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
because the being, I mean, having so many kids, to be like emotionally available for each of them, like it's hard. Not even like for 10 kids, even if it's hard to be available for like at least two people. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I wish, like, um, we had that like mental support, to deal with like the trauma that we experienced prior coming
Mm-hmm.
to the States. And then, after, um, probably that's like one of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's something that is, um, I mean, obviously not for everyone, but I think that there is more awareness of the importance of that now than there
Hmm.
was, 10, 15 years ago, which I think is a positive shift that people
Yes.
kind of realize, like, you don't have to necessarily have like extreme outward behaviors or extreme, like struggles that everybody can see, but just to have somebody, like a safe space, someone to talk to that's
Absolutely.
listening to you, that it's really helpful for
Hmm.
most people, I think.
Yeah.
Not just adopted kids,
Yeah.
but
Everybody
yeah,
live it.
everyone.
Mhm.
But I think that there's more awareness and like acceptance of that now, which is like I think a positive shift.
Yeah.
um what do you wish that people understood about the adoptee experience? And obviously, I mean, I know you're not speaking for all adoptees. You're speaking for yourself, but yeah, what's
Mhm.
like a misconception you feel like you hear, or something people don't get?
Um, I mean, I am involved in, like, adoption communities, and I
Hmm.
know a lot of kids.
Yeah.
I know a lot of some kids that are successful in this route, and some kids that have ended up being not in a pleasant position, as in like, being in jail and all
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, for me, like, looking back to it, after you and I had that discussion, and I'm like, um, God has just like honestly protected my heart in so many ways.
Mm-hmm.
As in, not to have any expectation. I mean by that is like, okay, so I'm adopted and I do have like an American mom,
Yeah.
American parents.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yes, they're my parents in this moment, and they're gonna play their role moving forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're not gonna be able to fit in my biological parents because that's not their role. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like I
Yeah.
cannot play Melissa's role, or you cannot play my role
Yep.
because we are unique in our own ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think what gave me peace is like, okay, yes, they're my parents, but at the same time, they cannot fill that hole
Mm-hmm.
and play that role. However, and vice versa too. Like, yes, I'm adopted, but at the same time, I cannot play their biological kid role
Sure.
because I can't. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I think making peace with that. Anybody that's
Mm.
wanting to adopt, it's like, okay, yes, you can be a mom or you can be a dad. However, you cannot be their biological parents, and that does
Yeah.
not make you a bad person.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that's how the nature is, right?
Yeah.
But however, you can be the mom that you wanted to be. You can be the dad that you wanted to be in the way that God has called you to provide for this kid, to
Mm-hmm.
mentor, to just be there upon His calling. So, um, yeah, the expectation, I feel like, yeah, adoption is cool and I'm going to be, adopting and all this, but it's like, no, deep down, like, are you ready? Because it's not easy.
No. No.
It's not like, um, like the simplest things. Like I remember my mom and I, whenever we go to the store, and she used to get really, really upset because, like, I mean, I'm black and she's white,
Yeah.
and like a lot of, if I say, "Oh, my mom," here's my mom, and it'll be like, "Why is she white?" And most of the time, I get questions, but are you gonna be okay with that?
Yeah.
And having that discussion with your kid, it's like, okay, this is what the community will say, but however, that's not going to make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
So having that, like, just have it all out at the table and just communicating that. um, and I think one of the thing with American parenting,
Mm-hmm.
it's what I have found is it's okay to talk about kids. But like when it's in front of them, like you have no idea how damaged psychologically. I don't know if your parents have done it, but I have seen it, and so many parents do it. Their
Mm-hmm.
kid, their kid is like literally beside them, and they're talking. Oh, my kid last week he did this and he did that, and I punished him, or he was in timeout and stuff. Like as a kid, hearing that is even more painful because you're giving out your kid's weakness out too. I mean, it can be your friend, but at the same
Yeah.
time, maybe talk about it when that kid is not present.
Yeah.
um, and I don't know, it might be from like the culture, to how open everyone is, which is okay. But I guess it's like, okay, no. And like even the adoption stories,
Mm-hmm.
that what your kid went through,
Mm-hmm.
because experiencing it, and after you go through all the struggles that you went through, all the trauma that you went through, and hearing about it years later is completely different, and then
Yeah.
it damaged you in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe the parents not to talk about it when the kids is present.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is okay to share how God led them to that kid to adopt them. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, I feel like maybe they don't have a position to share that kid's story,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
respect. It's not a bad thing. And if the parents wanted to share the kid's story, maybe ask for permission because that shows dignity, right?
Yeah.
And some of the things like we don't think about it, but you have no idea like mentally how it matters and how much damage it can do to that person.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes
So,
a lot of sense. And it's, yeah, like you said, I mean, showing respect to your child and letting them be the owner of their story and
mhm.
deciding who and when and if, other people get to learn about that. It's not really your story to share. So
No.
yeah, that's good to hear. Do you have advice? So if there is, as you probably, I don't know what your experience was, but a lot of times, kids who are adopted, they'll kind of have, like in the teenage years, maybe you're kind of grappling with your identity a little bit, or, in big transition points. If there's, maybe a teenager who is adopted, who's listening and they're struggling with their adoptive family and their identity, like do you have any advice for them?
Yes, I do, because I went through it.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's okay to feel that. It's
Mm-hmm.
normal. It doesn't make you to be a bad person. It doesn't
No.
make you to be less than anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I feel like it's good that you're experiencing that, because you're trying to find the pieces, right?
Yeah.
The calculation, and to make it even. However, it's like going back to the root. It's like, yes, there is a hole,
Mm-hmm.
and not having that expectation again. I talk with a lot of adopted kids, and they suffer from it, and it's so devastating to see them go through this. Yes, you're adopted, and that's the reality of it. However, being adopted in the Bible, it talks about as being chosen.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, it's like God chose you. You've been picked.
Yeah.
It's not that makes you even more special than someone having actually been pregnant and giving birth to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and plus, God is our redeemer, not anybody else. Like, your
Mm-hmm.
adoptive parents could not feel that emptiness in your heart, and your biological cannot feel that emptiness in your heart. Only God can redeem that. Like, honestly, I remember my sophomore year, and I was struggling with it, and I was like, okay. And it was in the middle of the night. Literally, like, I cried, I sobbed,
Mm.
and I'm like, God, just please take this burden out of my heart. Like, I cannot just deal with it anymore. And literally, like, I remember a hand coming through, like, just taking that pain away, and I felt it.
Wow.
And since then, I know God has taken care of it. And I don't mind sharing my story. Like, I'm confident when it comes to it, and I'm willing to talk about it, because a lot of people don't.
Yeah.
So yes, it's not easy. However, it's good that you're feeling this. That means the answer. You're trying to get to the answer, so you're getting closer to it. And at the same time, only God is your redeemer, nobody else.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Of
That's
course.
really encouraging to hear. Uh, so for someone who's listening to this, that maybe their, adoption is on their heart, they're trying to decide if this is the path for their family. Do you have advice for adoptive parents who are just kind of starting off on this journey?
I mean, one thing I would say is that, God plants the seed and the desire, right? And
Mm-hmm.
He knows how to provide. Um, and if He does give you the desire, and if He has placed that desire in your heart, He will provide to the needs, and He will provide the way. And however, don't force yourself to be a great parent. Don't force yourself for the kid trying to maybe forcing the relationship with the kid.
Mm-hmm.
Give it time, and you might not get the answers that you want, because, like, there's like the hype season, right? The adoption process went through, and everything is going well, and
Yeah.
you're about to bring your kid, and you have announced it to everybody, like the excitement. There's the
Yeah.
hype season, right?
Yeah.
And when the reality hit, okay, the kids had come home, and maybe the relationship that you want from the excitement is not happening. And
Mm-hmm.
that's normal, because, the kid is like literally coming to a new family,
Yeah. Yeah.
and parents that he doesn't know, and trying to accept them as the parents, not just like
Mm-hmm.
as a friend. It's okay, because like you hang out and you leave, right? And you have
Yeah.
that space. But
Yeah.
as a parent and as a kid, you don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe you will see them, like, you can go to your room, and then when you get out, they're still there.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can't leave. Yeah.
Probably that's the only space that you can get. So
Yeah.
to be gracious, honestly, and to give it time, and not getting the response that you want, it does not make you any less parents than you are. And, love doesn't give up,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because Christ was so consistent with us, and he still is, and he still does pursue us. And because we're adopted and we are chosen by his own blood. So just seeing what Christ has done for us and try to do the same. As
Yeah.
in, by being gracious and just loving him the way he is or she is in that season of their life, and just being there. And in time, the kid will see it.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I was going through stuff, but my parents weren't there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. That's
yeah.
great advice. And I'm glad that you brought up the provision piece as well, because I know a lot of people who, feel called to adopt, and they, adoption is very expensive. And that is scary for
It is.
most people. And it's hard to, when you're like, how is this math going to add up? How are we going to come up with this money? And that can be very, very stressful, and not to diminish that at all. But I mean, I can't tell you, one of the best parts of my job is I get to talk to families that have kind of walked these journeys, and I have like 100 stories of different ways in which, a family was like, I have no idea how this is going to work out. And like anonymous strangers leaving checks in
There
their,
you go.
mailbox for the exact
Yes.
amount they need. I just, that actually specific thing has happened. I've heard from families multiple times. It's just crazy. And so, like you said, if you have that desire, if you feel like that's where you're meant to be, it's okay to not know how it's all going to work out, because it will. And, we joke that we can't put that on our website, just trust that it will work out, but it really does. And it's it's just honestly just miracle, to see how that happens in people's lives. So
Absolutely.
just as an encouragement, if you are worried about that, I know it's hard, but have faith that it will work out, and it will. Well, Genet, is there anything else that is important for people to know about you or your story?
God has given us, even my husband Emmanuel and I, the vision of loving on people, and down in the future, of course, we will do want to open an orphanage, and see where God leads it, and at the same time, being the fatherless, or the father to the fatherless, and the mother to the motherless. So that's God's character, and as a family that we're pursuing that, and we love doing it. And I know this is just the beginning of his calling, so we're excited.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story and your openness. And it was truly a pleasure to chat with you. Thank you.
And of course, Melissa, thank you for having me. It's an honor.
That was Genet Roba. Thanks for listening to Together by AGCI. As always, if you liked what you heard, please rate or review us wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to read or watch even more stories, check out our website, allgodschildren.org. Reach out to us and let us know what you think on Instagram at All God's Children International, or email us at together@allgodschildren.org. We look forward to sharing another story of hope the next time we're together. We'll talk to you soon.